The mist rose from the river like breath from sleeping earth. Dawn had not yet broken when ESI stumbled down the muddy bank, her body still trembling from childbirth, her arms cradling a bundle wrapped in faded cloth. The village slept behind her, unaware, unseeing. She had no husband, no family willing to bear the shame. Only this river, ancient and indifferent, flowing toward somewhere she would never follow. She knelt at the water's edge. Her tears fell first, silent, hot, then the baby. The current took the bundle gently, almost tenderly, as if the river understood what she could not bear to carry. ESI watched until the cloth disappeared around a bend, then turned and walked back into the shadows of her life. But rivers have memory, and kindness, once given to its waters, never truly drowns. Kojo was checking his nets when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to morning. Not a bird, not the wind, a cry, thin and desperate, carried on the current. He waded into the shallows, his weathered hands reaching toward a bundle caught between two rocks, soaked but somehow still afloat. Inside, a newborn girl, alive, her tiny fists clenched around nothing, her eyes squinting against a light she should never have seen. Kojo's wife had died 2 seasons before. His house was empty. His heart, he thought, had grown too old for surprises. Yet here she was, delivered by the same river that had taken his livelihood in the drought, the same water that fed his family for 50 years. He wrapped her in his dry shirt, felt her warmth against his chest, and made a choice that would ripple forward through time. "Alma," he whispered, "gift of Saturday." Because today, the river gave instead of taking. 16 years passed like seasons, some gentle, some harsh. Alma grew into a young woman with hands that knew hard work and a heart that knew harder questions. The village whispered. They always had. Found child, river baby, no real family. The words followed her like shadows, but she learned to walk in light anyway. Every morning before dawn, she carried water from the river to the old widow Abina, who could no longer make the journey herself. Every evening, she helped Kojo mend nets, her fingers quick and sure. She shared her small portions of food with stray dogs. She sang to children who had no mothers. She gave and gave and gave, as if kindness could answer the question she'd never spoken aloud. Why was I thrown away? But the river, flowing past her every day, kept its secrets. And Alma kept carrying water, not knowing that every act of compassion was being remembered, drop by drop, deed by deed, by something far greater than village gossip. The drought came without warning, cruel and complete. The river, once full and generous, shrank to a thin, sluggish thread. Crops withered. Fish disappeared. Kojo's nets hung empty, and for the first time in Alma's memory, she saw fear in his eyes. The village grew desperate. Then they grew cruel. Old suspicions surfaced like stones in shallow water. The river rejects us because of her, someone muttered at the market. A child with no roots brings no rain. Alma heard it, felt the stares like heat on her back, but she said nothing. Instead, she worked twice as hard. She walked 3 miles to the distant spring to fetch water for those too weak to go themselves. She shared her family's dwindling grain with neighbors who wouldn't meet her eyes. She forgave them before they even asked. And one scorching afternoon, as she poured the last cup of water into the cracked lips of a dying elder, that elder grasped her wrist and whispered, "The river knows what you are, child. Even when it's silent, it remembers." Alma didn't understand. Not yet. He appeared at sunset, an old man with dust-covered feet and eyes that seemed to see through skin to bone. No one knew where he'd come from, only that he sat beneath the baobab tree at the village edge, asking for nothing, refusing nothing, watching everything. Alma brought him water. Not much. There wasn't much to give, but she poured it carefully into his cupped palms, the last of her own ration for the day. The beggar drank slowly, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't name. "You have your mother's kindness," he said. Alma froze. "You knew my mother?" "I know the river," he replied, cryptic and calm. And the river knew her. It carried something precious once, something she thought she was throwing away. But you can't lose what's truly loved. It always comes back. He reached into his tattered bag and pulled out a small pendant, tarnished silver, shaped like a water drop, with a single blue stone in its center. This was hers. She left it at the bank. The morning she left you, I've been walking a long time to return it. Alma's hand trembled as she took it. The metal was warm, as if it had been held close to a beating heart. Where is she? Alma whispered. The beggar pointed upstream. Where guilt runs deeper than any drought. Find the source, child. The river is waiting to remember. That night, Alma showed Kojo the pendant. His face crumpled like old paper. For 16 years, he had held a secret. Not out of cruelty, but out of love too fierce to risk losing her. I found you at dawn, he said, voice breaking. Wrapped in cloth, caught in the current. I knew someone had left you. I knew it was deliberate. But I also knew you were mine the moment I held you. Alma's tears came hot and fast. Not from anger. She could never be angry at Kojo, but from the sudden, aching weight of understanding. Someone had held her once. Someone had let her go. I need to know why, she said. Kojo nodded slowly, his old hands shaking. Then I'll take you upstream. But Alma, remember this. Whoever she was, whatever she did, you became something beautiful anyway. That's not her gift. That's yours. They would leave at dawn, and the river, still barely a trickle in the drought, seemed to wait with them, silent, patient, remembering. The path upstream was harsh and unforgiving. The sun beat down on cracked earth. The riverbed was mostly exposed stone, occasional puddles reflecting the cloudless sky. Alma and Kojo walked in silence, their feet stirring dust that had once been mud. But even in drought, Alma couldn't stop herself. She saw a mother struggling with 2 children and carried the smallest one for an hour. She saw a farmer's ox collapse from heat and helped dig a shallow pit to give it shade. She gave away her water skin to a pregnant woman whose lips were bleeding from dryness. Kojo watched her with a mixture of pride and sorrow. You'll have nothing left for yourself, he warned gently. Alma smiled, tired, sunburned, but unshaken. If I wait until I have enough, I'll never give anything at all. That evening, they stopped at a small village. The people there recognized Alma immediately, not her face, but her spirit. You're the girl who carried water during the drought, an old woman said. 3 villages downstream, they still talk about you. Alma blushed. I just did what anyone. No, the woman interrupted. Most people don't. But you did, and because you did, we'll help you now. They fed her, gave them shelter, pointed them further upstream. There's a woman living alone near the old shrine, they said. She never comes to market, never speaks, but she weeps by the river every morning, even though there's barely water to weep into. Alma's heart clenched. She clutched the pendant tighter. The house was small, hidden behind wild brush and neglect. Smoke rose from a cooking fire, thin and hesitant. Alma approached slowly, her legs suddenly weak, her breath shallow. Kojo stayed back, giving her space for what she needed to do alone. She knocked. The door opened, and there stood a woman, maybe 40, maybe older, with eyes that had cried themselves empty long ago. Yes, I. She looked at Alma, and her face went white as bone. No. Yes, I whispered. No, you can't be. I am, Alma said, her voice barely steady. She held up the pendant. You left this. The river brought it back. ESI collapsed to her knees, sobbing, a sound so raw and broken it didn't seem human. 16 years of guilt, shame, and self-hatred poured out onto the dry ground. I'm sorry, she choked. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Alma stood frozen, torn between rage and pity, between the child who'd been abandoned and the woman who'd learned to forgive strangers every day of her life. Finally, she knelt beside ESI. She didn't embrace her. Not yet, but she stayed. Tell me why, Alma said softly. Help me understand. ESI's voice was hoarse, scraped raw by years of silence. She told Alma everything. The violence that had created her, the family that had disowned ESI when she refused to lie about it, the village that had shamed her until shame became her only identity. I thought I was saving you, ESI whispered. I thought if I kept you, you'd carry my curse. I thought the river would take you somewhere better, somewhere clean, where no one would know, where you could be loved without my shadow. Alma listened. She felt anger, yes, but also something unexpected, recognition. Because hadn't she felt the same? That she was a burden? That her existence needed justification? I didn't die, Alma said quietly. The river didn't let me. A good man found me, raised me, loved me. She paused. But I spent 16 years wondering why I wasn't enough to keep. ESI's sobs deepened. You were enough. You were everything. I couldn't see past my own shame. Outside, the wind shifted, and in the distance, impossibly miraculously, thunder rumbled. The rain came that night, not gently, but in sheets, wild, cleansing, relentless. The river swelled. The earth drank, and in that small house, 3 people sat together. A mother who had abandoned, a father who had found, and a daughter who had become the bridge between them. Alma didn't forgive ESI that night. Forgiveness, she realized, was a single moment. It was a choice made over and over, like carrying water every morning. But she stayed. She listened. She let ESI see what her daughter had become. And ESI wept again, but this time not from shame, from awe. You're kinder than I ever was, ESI whispered. How? Alma looked out at the rain, at the river now roaring with life. Because Kojo showed me that love isn't about blood. It's about choice. Every day he chose me. So I learned to choose kindness, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Kojo, sitting quietly in the corner, wiped his eyes. He had never heard Alma speak of him this way. He had only ever tried to do right by a child who needed him. He hadn't known he was teaching her the most important lesson of all. Outside, the river sang. It had been silent so long, but now it remembered its voice and its purpose. They walked back downstream together, all 3 of them. The river rushed beside them now, full and loud and alive. Villagers came out of their homes, faces turned toward the sky, hands open to catch rain they thought would never come. When they reached Kojo's village, people stared. They recognized Alma. They didn't recognize the woman beside her, but they saw something in the way Alma held her hand. Not with joy exactly, but with something harder won, compassion, grace. This is Izai, Alma said simply. She's my mother, and she's staying. The whispers started immediately, but Alma had learned long ago that whispers were just wind. They couldn't move her unless she let them. That evening, Alma stood by the river, the pendant in her palm. She had thought about throwing it back, letting the water take it again. But instead, she fastened around her neck. I'm keeping it, she told ESI, who stood nervously beside her. Not because of what it was, because of what it can become. A reminder that even broken things can be made whole. ESI nodded, tears streaming. She didn't deserve this daughter. She knew that, but Alma was teaching her that desert wasn't the point. Grace was. Weeks passed. The river stayed full. The crops recovered. And slowly, carefully, ESI began to find a place in the village. Not through grand gestures, but through small acts of service. She learned from Alma. She carried water. She mended clothes. She gave away what little she had. One afternoon, a young woman came to Alma in secret. She was pregnant, unmarried, terrified. They'll cast me out, she sobbed. I don't know what to do. Alma held her. She thought of ESI, of herself, of the river that had carried her to safety. You're not alone, she said firmly, and your child is not a curse. We'll help you. I promise. She brought the girl to ESI. And ESI, who had spent 16 years drowning in her own guilt, finally found her redemption. She helped the young mother through her pregnancy. She stood beside her when the village elders judged. She offered the fierce, protective love she'd been too broken to give her own child. And when the baby was born, healthy, crying alive, ESI held her and whispered, You are loved. You are wanted. You are enough. The words she'd never been able to say to Alma, but Alma heard them anyway. A year after the drought ended, Alma sat by the river with a group of children. She was teaching them to swim, to fish, to respect the water that gave them life. They splashed and laughed, their voices bright against the current's steady song. Kojo sat nearby, older now, slower, but smiling. ESI sat beside him, not family by blood, but by something stronger. They had both raised Amma, in different ways, in different times. And now they watched her become something neither of them could have imagined. A teacher, a healer, a woman who carried light into dark places. One of the children asked, "Miss Amma, why do you always help people, even when they're mean to you?" Amma smiled. She looked at Kojo, at ESI, at the river flowing past. Endless, patient, alive. Because, she said gently, kindness is like water. You can't see where it goes, but it always reaches somewhere. And even if people forget your name, they remember how you made them feel. The river taught me that. The child nodded, not quite understanding. But one day they would. Years later, the old beggar appeared again. He sat beneath the same baobab tree, watching the village with those ancient, knowing eyes. Amma, now a woman in her 30s, brought him water, cool, clean, given freely. He drank, then smiled. "You found her." "I found her," Amma confirmed. "And I found myself." The beggar nodded. "The river is pleased." Amma laughed softly. "The river is just water." "No," the beggar said, his voice like stone smoothed by centuries of current. "The river is memory. It remembers every act of kindness, every sacrifice, every moment of grace. That's why it brought you back. That's why it brought the rain. Not magic, just balance. You gave and gave and gave. The world gave back." He stood slowly, ready to leave again. But before he went, he placed a hand on Amma's head, a blessing, a benediction. "Tell your children," he said. "Tell them that nothing good is ever wasted. Even what we throw away can return, transformed by time and current. The river remembers. Always." Then he walked away, disappearing into the golden light of evening, leaving Amma standing by the water's edge, whole, healed, home. ESI died peacefully in her sleep, 10 years after Amma found her. She died forgiven not perfectly, but truly. She died knowing her daughter had become someone extraordinary, not despite being abandoned, but because she'd learned that love was a choice, not an obligation. Amma buried her by the river, and at the funeral, she spoke words that made even the hardest heart soften. "My mother gave me life twice. Once when she let me go, so I could be found by someone who would love me, and once when she returned and taught me that even the deepest guilt can be washed clean by grace." Kojo passed 2 years later. Amma held his hand as he faded, whispering thank yous until his last breath left him. She buried him beside Eli. Two people who'd had no connection except a child they both loved, in their own broken, beautiful ways. And then Amma continued. She taught. She healed. She carried water. She became the village's elder, the one people came to when life felt impossible. She never married, never had children of her own, but she mothered hundreds. On her final day, many decades later, Amma walked to the river one last time. She removed the pendant from her neck, held it in her palm, and smiled. Then she released it into the current. It disappeared quickly, carried downstream, towards someone else who might need to remember that they were loved, that they were found, that they were enough. The same river that once carried her away now carried her story home. Because even water remembers the hands that showed it kindness. And somewhere downstream, a new child will be found. A new story will begin. A new life will learn what Amma learned. That nothing good is ever lost. That kindness echoes forward through time. That even what we cast away can return with grace. The river remembers. Always. Even the river that takes can also give. We are all carried by something greater than ourselves. Choose to be the current that brings others home.